Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Thank You Games. I am Roshan, aka Roro, and I am joined by one half of the Team Chat podcast duo, the lover of all things Star Wars, Jerrett Wilson.
Hey, Roro, thanks for having me on, man.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for doing this with me. And as I said in the previous video, this is just a nice little video series where I wanted to get some buddies around the content creation / video industry space that we are both in. And just talk about what their game of the year is for this crazy year that is 2020. Just wanted to see some positive stuff around the video game industry. So I wanted to talk to you, Jerrett, about what your game of the year is. So Jerrett, what is your game of the year for 2020?
Well, I don't know if, like I said before we started going, I feel like you might have kind of an idea because you just so happened to be on the episode of Team Chat where we talked about it. But I have to give my game of the year to The Last of Us Part 2. I just think that game, just of all the rest, and I know there's some this year that I've missed that I want to be able to play eventually too. But I think just for everything that game offered and what it was and how it played out and worked into the story of the first game, I just think Last of Us Part 2 has to take it for me for Game of the Year.
Definitely. I think I am in the same boat too. I actually made a video about it, me trying to decide if it's going to be The Last of Us or it's going to be Animal Crossing. I'm having such a hard time deciding between those two games, as different as they are, but both of them I love so much. But I think I'm in the same boat as you, where The Last of Us Part 2 is my Game of the Year this year. So there was a lot of controversy that happened before the game came out with the leaks and people not being happy with certain story decisions. Did any of that impact you before playing the game? Did you see any of those leaks, or did you go in completely blind? And
I'm pretty sure I just went in completely blind.
Nice.
Like with things like that, like Last of Us, Star Wars things, different stuff like that, I go, by the time it starts getting close, and like maybe after the first trailer, maybe second trailer, I'm like, no, I'm done. I don't want to know anything else
dark.
because going dark, because I just want to be completely left out or completely surprised by what it offers. I think I avoided all the big leaks really, and all the big surprises I think were still had their same impact for me. So that was really good being able to go into that. How much in this are we able to talk about spoilers? I probably should have asked that before we started, but
I think we can go full spoilers. I'm going to say, okay. I'll give the warning here that we're going to go into full spoilers which I think we will. But because I do want to ask you about your favorite parts, your least favorite parts, and stuff like that. So if you guys haven't played The Last of Us Part 2, or if you don't care, we're going into spoilers in this video probably. So yeah, let's actually go from there. What was your favorite part of the game? Like, what stood out to you the most?
Favorite part?
It could be more than one.
Yeah, I honestly, it's kind of, I know it's a big chunk of the game, but honestly, playing as Abby, I think, was my favorite part. I think, though, for that reason, the reason being for that is just because everyone expected playing this game that you were going to play as Ellie. Maybe you were going to have a couple times where you jumped over and played as Joel, which you did. But I think getting to play as Abby, and for the amount of time that you got to play as Abby, and for how that completely changed up the viewpoint of the story, in that how you even viewed Abby as a character, I was just like, this is so good and so well done. As far as like a specific moment, the moment where you're with Lev and you're going through like the skyscrapers and the sky bridges, that part was super cool for me, just from like a level design perspective. I also really enjoyed, for a more sentimental moment, I guess, I really loved the part with Ellie and Joel when Joel surprises her with taking her to the museum.
Oh, right. Yes.
And she gets to see the dinosaurs, does like the space exploration stuff. He gives her that cassette tape that she'd been wanting. I just think there were so many good moments there, and I think it balanced so well the moments of joy that you could find, like with that museum scene, with even then the moments of absolute despair that you were very big in this game. I just think it played a well balance with those. So I think finding a favorite moment is hard, but I do have to say I think overall playing as Abby was my favorite because of how unexpected that was.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with both of those parts. Like the museum part was definitely one of my favorite moments in the game, just because of how much we got to see a bit more of Joel and Ellie sort of being that father-daughter relationship that we got to see in the first game, but in this game we really got to see a lot more of those flashbacks and see what happened between those years. But Abby was something that I didn't expect to enjoy myself either. Like at the beginning of the game, I was like, I don't know if I like her. But by the end of the game,
you were supposed to hate her.
Absolutely,
at the
and that's why I think this game is so good. And like you, like it's a testament of the writers and the team behind it to how they made us feel at the beginning, and then because they wrote her so well, I think, to make us relate to her and empathize with her, eventually coming around to liking her. So I think they did a fantastic job with Abby and all the characters, but Abby especially because of her role as like kind of the antagonist slash protagonist in a weird way. She's kind of both, so it's really cool.
Yeah.
But do you think... So Last of Us Part 2 is your game of the year. Is there anything... Do you think Cyberpunk can beat that? Like, get rid of like Jeff Keighley's rules and all that kind of stuff. There's any games coming out still that you think could possibly take The Last of Us down? It's hard to say, but
it is hard to say because you know there could always be unexpected things, more unexpected things. I would be surprised if anything came by to beat it. I know, like I talked about some of the things that I missed this year that I really wish I hadn't or had played so far. Like I really want to still and play Hades and Ghost of Tsushima.
Yes,
those are kind of the two that I'm really like feel like I'm missing out on that I haven't played yet this year. And I think those two could, but I don't know though. I don't know if anything really could upset it because Last of Us what has been my favorite game of all time. And so now having part 2, which part 2 was even more in my head of, do I even feel like I need a part 2? When I finished part 1, I was just like, this is amazing. Like, I don't know if I need more because of how good it was. But then they were able to follow it up so well. And I just feel like the emotional impact that The Last of Us Part 2 has just really connects with me. And I don't even know if I can necessarily place why. It just hits so well in all the story beats. I love all the different mechanics of it and how much even this game improved on the last in those regards. Didn't feel quite as not clunky, but like the first game had like kind of has some awkwardness in how it feels. This one felt way more smooth and just way more polished in that regard. But I just think the story of it just sells it so well. I think Cyberpunk, yes, I think for its originality and uniqueness of its world and just breadth of that game, I think yes, could definitely be putting it as a very heavy front runner for Game of the Year maybe next year, or like as a runner up for this one. Yeah. But did you see the tweet or whatever that came out that one that a developer on Cyberpunk has played 175 hours and hasn't finished it yet? Like, oh my god! Yeah. Like you're looking at a huge chunk of a game, big old game. So like it's gonna take a year or more for me to even get through that one. I feel like.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there is another one yet that I've played this year that could come up as a second or replace it. I think maybe even in my head I had decided it was going to be my game of the year before it even came out. So I think like having that and then getting to play it and being like, oh yeah, no, it's good. And it's good in a lot of ways. I think it's still cemented pretty firmly for me.
I think the exact same boat, rowing that boat with you, because The Last of Us 2013 was my favorite game as well for the past 7 years. And then Last of Us Part 2 came out and I was like, there's no way that this game is not going to be my game of the year this year. I mean, I was in this exact same mindset. Like, there's no way. I was waiting ever since they announced it at 2016's PlayStation Experience. I'm like, there's no way. I can't wait for this game. And it finally came out, and just echoing everything that you're saying, the story, the characters, the gameplay, somehow better than the first. The story somehow, I think somehow better than the first. There were still some emotional moments that we talked about on the Team Chat podcast episode where I was like, I can go back to The Last of Us Part 1 and still, there's so many moments that still make me cry. I don't know if that'll happen with Part 2, if I go back and still cry, but The Last of Us Part 1, every time, there's still moments that just make me bawl.
Just break you down, man. Like, that's how I feel like Part 2 will be. Like, I've only played The Last of Us twice when it came out, and right before Part 2 came out. And so like I don't know how long it's going to be before I feel ready to play Part 2 again because of how heavy it was. Like that's what I said a lot of times. I was just like, it's a great game, but I wouldn't necessarily call it a fun game because it's so heavy. Like there were multiple times in this one where I was like, oh, I need to take a break, and I need to like step away for a second and just process what I've experienced. But did you have any like sense of trepidation before playing part 2, of worry that it wouldn't hold up to part 1?
I did. I wasn't worried that I wouldn't enjoy it, but I was worried that, especially with all the leaks and the controversy that came out around the game, I was honestly getting a bit worried, because I did see some of the stuff and I did read some of the stuff. I don't know why I did that to myself, but I did look into a couple of things, and I was like, oh no, are they right, or is this really not going to be as good as they say? But I should have known that. Like, I have faith in Naughty Dog. I love all their games before The Last of Us, and Last of Us just ended up being my favorite. But yeah, I should have known better to to doubt them. But yeah, it was fantastic. I absolutely loved it, and something that we didn't touch upon is like their slew of accessibility options as well. Like for people who need those options, they're there, and they don't really hinder the experience at all. They elevate it to make it easier for everybody to play, and I think they've set the bar almost too high for AAA games to come. Like, they'll be, I don't know, it's like there's so many options in there that I feel like it's going to be taking a while for everybody to have these as just like a no-brainer in their games going forward. But,
well, even just the fact that they had the accessibility options as the very first thing that you see when the game loads up, like, I think that's an incredible move. And now I've seen that since in a couple other games. Like, I want to say Star Wars Squadrons did the same thing, but like, it was just it's very cool to see that being the first thing, and that you don't have to go hunt through the menus to find it later. It's as the game starts up for the very first time, you're hit with the options to be able to customize the experience as needed. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. So, do you think we'll be getting a Last of Us Part 3? Not anytime soon, but do you think we'll ever get one?
Yeah, like 15 years. Yeah. I don't know. Because again, it kind of ended in the exact same way as I did with the first one, where I was like, do I need more of this? I wouldn't say no to it, but do I need it is the question, I guess. And I would say I could see them coming back to it. I think there's room for the story for it to allow for it. I hope if it does come back, it does focus on Abby and Lev and their adventures. Cool. I think that would be a nice, like, kind of I feel like if they did go that way, part 2 set it up as the perfect transition for that. But I don't know, honestly, if they'll do a part 3. Right now, though, I'm just going to be pretty damn content with the HBO show that's coming out. So,
oh my gosh, I was going to ask about that too. Yeah.
Oh man, I'm excited for that. I'm excited for that.
Yes.
I mean, worried a little bit, like, will it translate as well over to the TV show? Yeah. But also, I mean, with Neil Druckmann and Naughty Dog at large being so heavily involved in it, Gustavo Santaolalla is coming back for the soundtrack, which, yes, like, the soundtrack is another part of this game that just makes it for me. And so having all those key players in, I think is going to still, it's set up for success. So hopefully the execution is there as well. Absolutely. So while I wait the next 8 years for part 3, I'll just be very content with that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I can't wait for the HBO series too. There's so many stories in video games that I'm so upset that a lot of people don't get experience just because they don't play them, or there's a certain type of game that they don't enjoy playing. Like, maybe they don't like third-person shooters, or they don't like indies or whatever, and they just don't get to experience that game. But TV is so much more accessible, obviously, for a number of different reasons, that they can be able to finally experience these stories. So it sucks that video game movies have a track record of being super bad, that when they do finally come to the big screen, they're like, I don't get it. Like, why do people like this? But I really hope that The Last of Us is different, and like, it follows the Sonic route and the Detective Pikachu sort of track record that we're starting to see now. So I'm very excited for The Last of Us HBO so I could finally show it to my parents or to my girlfriend, and them finally understanding why I freaked out when The Last of Us Part 2 was announced.
I know, that's the thing. Like, I keep thinking, like, man, I wish there was a way for, like, my dad to watch this, but I know he's not going to, like, log on to YouTube and watch just, like, a commentary free 35-hour video of this to watch the story of The Last of Us. But I'm like, but I know he'd love it. So hopefully the having the HBO show will provide that accessibility to the story that you were talking about. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Jerrett, for joining me today on Thank You Games to talk about The Last of Us Part 2, our game of the year. But yeah, where can people find you?
They can find me on Twitter at JT Wilson. You can also find the show, Team Chat Podcast, at Team Chat Podcast on all social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. And then we are also on podcast services around the World Wide Web. And we also have a YouTube channel where you can watch a video version of each episode as you choose. So so all those different places. That's just youtube.com/Team Chat Podcast as well. So
there we go. All right.
Basically anywhere /Team Chat Podcast, we should be there. So.
Perfect. All right. Well, there you go, people. Follow Team Chat Podcast. Follow Jerrett on Twitter. And until next time, later will be greater. Bye.
Bye.